Alright, on the next line we've created the interface to our file system object, and then we've created an if statement to find out whether or not the log file actually exists. So we've said here, if the file exists, and that's our log file, which is simply logfile.txt up here on the root of our C drive, then we'll simply echo out to the command prompt that the file logfile.txt already exists. And then what we'll do is we'll open up the text file, and we'll do that using for appending, as we don't actually want to overwrite the file, we just want to add text to it. And then we'll simply add in a new line here with the text new entry, and then it will print the time and date followed by a carriage return, so our cursor then appears on a new line ready for another entry. And finally, if there's no more instructions, we'll end our if statement. Now if the log file doesn't exist, then our else statement here will execute. Now in this case, we'll simply echo out to the command window that the file doesn't exist, and then of course it will be created using our create text file method. Now finally, again, we'll write out the time and date using the now function, and then our if statement will exit. Now of course what's going to happen is when we run this script a second time, the first part of our if statement up here will now be true, as there should be a text file called logfile.txt, and then the else part of our statement will never ever execute. So let's go and try it. We'll go over here to our command prompt and we'll simply run text.vbs, and there we go. But you can see here we've got a message telling us that our logfile.txt doesn't exist, so it's been created for us, and obviously our script has now completed. So if we go back here to Windows Explorer, and I'm going to go to my root of my C drive here, you can see there's our log file. So if we go and open it, inside you can see here that we have the time and date on the first line. Alright, well, let's go and close Notepad and we'll run our script again. Okay, this time you can see we're told that our log file already exists. So if we go back and open up our log file again, we can see here that a new line has been appended to our log file. So rather than overwriting the text in our file, we've simply added to it instead. Now something to point out, if we didn't use the carriage returns in our script, by the way I'm talking about this part here, the VBCRLF, then these two entries that you see here would actually be like this on the same line. So think about using those carriage returns in your scripts, and that of course is going to make the output more readable like we've just done here. Now one thing I didn't point out here is this line here down the bottom, object file close. Now that's a good practice to close the file after you've used it, just to make sure that there are no bits of the program lying around in memory that may cause conflicts when you try to open it up again later on. Alright, well, let's go and move on, and let's take a look at some of the ways of searching through our text files to see if certain words or phrases can be found inside. So I'll go over here and we'll select our search.vbs script here. Okay, now up until the first half of this script here, we've seen everything before, perhaps with one small exception. In this script, we've defined a constant here that only opens up the file for reading, as we don't want to overwrite anything in our text file. We just want to search through it to see if there's a match for the word we want to find. Okay, so down here we've set our search variable to read in all of the lines in our text file, and then down here we're going to close the file. Now we've also introduced a new variable, found text, and we're using the inString function to hunt through the text in our search variable for the text old. And finally, we're going to echo out the results. Now I will point out that the results from this script might not be what you expect. Using the inString function will tell us if the search string of old is found in our log file, but it won't return the word old, it's only going to return a value, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. Alright, well, we'll go and run it anyway, so we'll go to our command prompt and we'll type in search.vbs, and as you can see it comes back here with a numeric value of 0. 0 simply means that the text wasn't found. So if we go back to Windows Explorer, I'm going to go and open up our log file here. You can see it doesn't in fact contain the word old anyway. So let's go and change our script, and we'll choose to look for the word new here. Okay, so we'll go back to our script and we'll change the word old to new, and we'll save it. And now we'll go and run our script again. Okay, well this time it produces the value 1, which does indicate that the search string was found. But what does this number 1 mean? Well, using the inString function is actually used to return the first occurrence of a string inside another one. So what's happened here is that the word new appears in our log file as the very first word in the text file. Now this means that our inString function simply returned the first spot in the file where it found the word new. So it simply returned as the value 1, since the word new was found in the first character position in the file. So to prove this, we'll go back to Windows Explorer, we'll open up our log file, and as you can see, the first word here is the word new, which obviously starts at character position number 1. So what I'll do is I'm going to put something in front of this word here. I'm just going to type in blah, and obviously the new word here should appear character 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as the 6th character in the file. And it is the 6th character in the file, by the way, because you do include the space as a valid character. Alright, well I'm just going to go and save this log file. And we'll go back and we'll run our script again. Now this time, our script returns the value of 6. So there's an example of using the inString function. Okay, well let's go and move on, and we'll look at a more useful example which we can actually use to return the search text back to us. Okay, so I'll go back to my scripting editor. I'll open up another script here. Now in this example here, we're going to use a regular expression to get back the desired search string. Now I'm going to point out ahead of time that this isn't designed to be a detailed video on regular expressions. That will take another video or even several videos by itself to cover the topic of regular expressions. So just think of this as a brief introduction. Alright, now at the top of this script here, we've declared a constant. We've seen that before. On the second line, we've set up our interface to the VBScript regular expression object, or regexp object, and we've set this up in exactly the same way we did for the file system object, and you can see that a couple of lines below. Now in the next line, we've set our regular expression to global equals true. You see, by default, this regular expression will only return or replace a single occurrence of anything it finds, or in other words, the first item it finds a match for. So by using the global argument and setting it to true, it'll find or replace every single item it can match. And on the next line, we've specified the search text, which we've set to new. Now the next few lines here, we've seen before. We're going to create the interface to the file system object. We'll open up our text file, and then of course we'll read it and close the file. Okay, now next we've used this execute function here from our regular expression object to hold the contents of our search. But here we could have also used replace instead of execute, and by providing two strings, this would enable us to find and replace text in our log file. Now since we're only interested in finding text at this stage, we've gone ahead and used execute. Either way, if you don't have this global setting we talked about up the top here set to true, then regardless of whether you use execute or replace, it'll result in only the first match being used. So setting it to true like we did here will find or replace all items that match our regular expression. Okay, well, next we've created an if statement that simply says if the count, or the number of matches found in our search, is greater than 0, or in other words, it found one or more matches for our search string, obviously it's called new, then we'll display this text here saying the following matches were found, and then our for each loop will execute, and then it's going to simply display the matches that it found. Now if there aren't any matches or the count is 0, then our else statement down here is going to execute and simply present this text which is going to tell us that nothing was found. Alright, well, let's go and run this script. So we'll go to our command prompt, and I'm going to run regex.vbs, and we'll hit enter. Alright, and it comes back and it tells us that it's found 2 occurrences of the word new in our file. So just to check that it works properly, what we should do is we'll go back to our script here, and I'm going to change this word from new to old, and we'll save our script, and we'll go and run it again. Okay, this time our else statement runs since there were no matches, and we're told it didn't find anything. Now actually there's one other thing I probably should mention while we're discussing these regular expressions. They are case sensitive. So if I go back to my script here, and I'm going to go and change old back to new, except this time I'm going to spell it all in lowercase, and I'll save this, and we'll go back to our command prompt, we'll run it again. This time it comes back and tells me that it found nothing. Now obviously the word new does exist in our log file, we know that, but it starts with a capital N rather than a lowercase n. Okay, so to solve this problem, what we'll do is this. We'll go and add in a new line here. And again, what we've done is we've referenced our regular expression and we've added the ignore case and set that equal to true. Now when our script runs, it will be case insensitive and should find the word new regardless of whether it's in uppercase, lowercase, or a mixture of both. So I'm going to save this script here. We'll go back to our command prompt. We'll run it again. Okay, and this time our scripts work. So there you have it. Finding strings in text isn't a terribly difficult thing to do. But what if you want to replace the text that you've just found with some other text? Well, we did talk about that briefly as part of this script, so you already know one way. But let's go and consider a different example. So I'm going to go back here. I've got another script here called search2.vbs. Now in this example, we'll again search for a string inside a text file, but this time, if we find the correct string, we're going to replace it with some other text. In the same way, you could do a find replace in Notepad or Word. So as before at the top here, we've declared our variables. We've specified two constants, the first for reading the text file and the second for writing the text file. Now then, we've used the set function to create the interface of the file system object, and then of course we've opened up our log file. And then we'll use our search variable to read in the lines in our text file, and finally we're going to close the file. Alright, now here we've set a new variable found text, and here we're using the replace function to hunt through the text in our search variable for the text new, and we're going to replace any occurrences with the word old. Alright, now that we've found the text that we need to replace, down here we've again used set to open up our log file, and this time we've opened it up for writing, so that way we can write to the file. Now finally down the bottom here, we've used the write line to write each replacement text to the text file, and of course we're going to close the file. Okay, so let's go and run our script. We'll go to our command prompt, and I'm going to run search2.vbs, and we'll hit enter. Okay, it's done, so we'll go back to Windows Explorer, and I'm going to go and open up our log file again. And you can see here that our text file has had all occurrences of the word new replaced with the word old. Okay, in this video we've seen how to use the file system object, which lets us work with drives, files and folders and text files. We've used the file system object to create folders, copy files, create text files, locate strings in text files, and perform find and replace functions within a text file. Now, since these sorts of functions are commonplace in any Windows administrator's career, you'll find lots of power and flexibility when you use the file system object in your scripts.